Good morning, Europe. It's Friday, the 25th of May. Our headlines for you. Anytime, any format. In an escalating game of brinkmanship, North Korea fires back after Donald Trump abruptly cancels a historic summit. And from the Cube, our social media news desk.
We'll be reading between the lines of that letter from Donald Trump, breaking it down for you.
Oh my gosh, you're playing with fire. These terms are so...
You don't think you're playing with fire?
Absolutely not.
Defending nationalism, Steve Bannon, the man who helped make Trump president, talks to us about the future of Europe. Ireland votes. Should its abortion ban be repealed? Well, that's what millions of Irish people are answering today in a divisive referendum. Plus, protecting privacy as Europe cracks down with new digital rules, we look at who's not ready. Thank you for starting your day with us. We're going to get to the latest on North Korea in just a moment, but we begin with breaking news in Canada. An explosion ripped through a restaurant in the city of Mississauga, which is just beside Toronto. One local report says at least 15 people were wounded, 3 of them critically. Police say an improvised explosive device was detonated. Now, they have released an image of 2 suspects who they say were seen running from the scene. We'll continue to follow the story and bring you more updates as and when we get them. Now, after days of increasingly fiery rhetoric, North Korea is offering a surprisingly measured response to America's decision to cancel an historic summit next month. It says it regrets Trump's decision and is willing to talk, quote, at any time, in any format, while leaving lingering questions about what happens next. NBC News' Kirsten Welker has the story.
The historic summit with Kim Jong-un had been on shaky ground. That ground gave way.
I believe that this is a tremendous setback for North Korea and indeed a setback for the world.
A senior administration official says the president made the decision to cancel the summit after North Korean statements threatening the U.S. with a nuclear-to-nuclear showdown and referring to Vice President Pence as a political dummy. The president dictating a 3-paragraph response to the North Korean dictator, blasting Kim's tremendous anger and open hostility displayed in your most recent statement.
Hopefully positive things will be taking place with respect to the future of North Korea. But if they don't, we are more ready than we have ever been before.
A senior administration official calling North Korea's actions a trail of broken promises, including last week standing up U.S. diplomats who were prepping for the summit.
We had received no response to our inquiries from them.
And Kim backtracking on vows to discuss denuclearization made during historic meetings with Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and with South Korea's president at the DMZ, claiming it destroyed a nuclear test site, but refusing to let inspectors verify that. In recent days, Mr. Trump signaling the summit was in jeopardy.
There's a very substantial chance that it won't work out, and that's okay.
The cancellation comes after 3 American detainees had been released, even discussion of a Nobel Prize.
Nobel. I just want to get the job done.
The president still leaving the door open, writing to Kim, if you change your mind, please do not hesitate to call me or write. A diplomatic drama waiting for its next act. Kristen Welker, NBC News, the White House.
Well, as we just heard there, Trump delivered the news in a bit of a Dear John letter that's getting quite a lot of attention. With more on that, let's go to Alex in the Cube. Alex?
Absolutely, Tessa. In the past, letters might be delivered by post. Now their key messages are delivered in Twitter posts, it seems. Donald Trump sharing this letter here before, we're told, key US allies were aware that the summit was off. And the language of this letter immediately grabbed people, and people are suggesting it's a return to brinkmanship between America and North Korea. So let's just pull up a couple of the key points. Now, we heard there that the letter was dictated by Donald Trump, and you can hear the president's voice in some of this, can't you? You talk about your nuclear capabilities, but ours are so massive and powerful that I pray to God they will never have to be used. People seeing that as a threat of nuclear war. But just below that, we have this. I felt a wonderful dialogue was building up between you and me, and ultimately, it is only that dialogue that matters. A real focus on the relationship, the seemingly wonderful relationship that was developing between President Trump and Kim Jong-un. And then at the end of the letter, as we did just hear there, if you change your mind having to do with this important summit, don't hesitate to call or write. So people are confused. Is this brinkmanship, or is this an olive branch as well? Let's just have a look at some of the key responses. Chris King calling this arguably the most dangerous and inflammatory example of diplomacy to date. But British Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson taking the other stance altogether, saying, no, the president's been clear. He's set out the reasons why he's walked away from the summit. You can check out the full letter on Euronews' Facebook page and then let us know what you think. Let us know with your comments and hashtag theCUBE.
Thanks for that, Alex. Reading between the lines there. Thank you. So June 12th looks like it's off, but both sides left the door open to future talks. Euronews correspondent Alistair Sanford joins me now in the studio. Alistair, so here we are. But where is the process going to go from here?
Well, Tessa, with Donald Trump, who knows what he's playing at, as Alex has been saying. On the face of it, the reasons for the cancellation of the summit look surprising. Yes, he refers in the letter to the anger and hostility of the North Koreans. We've had the cracked-up rhetoric in recent days, North Koreans not showing up for meetings. But these sort of bumps in the road are to be expected. Now, some analysts are seeing this as a classic move on the part of Donald Trump. Could he be trying to secure a stronger negotiating position to force the North Koreans to give more concessions? But perhaps we're reading too much diplomacy here when we know that Donald Trump doesn't really do diplomacy, he does deals. But whether or not you conclude it's gamesmanship on behalf of the White House or that they've simply misread the North Koreans' position, arguably it doesn't really matter so much. If you read into it, the path is still open for progress. This isn't the end of the road. Parts of the Donald Trump letter, as we've seen, have been pretty conciliatory. He talked, in fact, of the North Koreans having released the US hostages as being a beautiful gesture. So maybe this is a realization that things have gone too far, too fast. There was no smoothing of the way towards this summit with low-level talks. There were no fixing of objectives. There were different interpretations, as we know, of denuclearization, which was causing some problems. The next step could just be perhaps something more multilateral. South Korea is humiliated right now. President Moon wasn't told about this, and yet he'd been in Washington just a few days ago. Could the next steps include South Korea and, crucially, China? Now, we don't know about their influence on North Korea, but of course they do want big influence in the region. Perhaps something multilateral would be better than this sort of two-way thing between Washington and Pyongyang.
All right. Thanks for that, Alistair Sanford. Investigators say the missile that brought down Malaysian Airlines Flight 17 over Ukraine in 2014 came from the Russian army. It was fired over territory held by pro-Russian separatists, killing all 298 people on board, most of them Dutch. An investigation team led by the Netherlands said it identified the launcher that fired the missile and tracked its location before and after the crash. Russia has repeatedly denied the accusations, but President Vladimir Putin now says he'll look into the findings. He's currently hosting France's Emmanuel Macron for a two-day state visit in St. Petersburg. And for more on that, we have our correspondent Annelise Borges live in Paris. Annelise, how are the pair hitting it off so far?
Well, this was a meeting between two men who seemed to know each other rather well. They kept addressing each other by their first names, and Emmanuel Macron even risked a cher Vladimir and kept addressing the Russian president by tu, which is an informal way of addressing a person here in France in French. Of course, these are details, but very important details. The two men spoke for 3 hours behind closed doors. And when they came out for that press conference in St. Petersburg yesterday, they were clearly highlighting the things that they have in common, the fight that they are undertaking together. And at the heart of that fight, of course, is the Iran nuclear deal. Both Emmanuel Macron and Vladimir Putin once again talking about the importance of salvaging the JCPOA. The Russian president actually questioning the U.S.'s motives for exiting the deal, saying that he had been personally informed that Iran was abiding by the agreement, and welcoming France's and Europe's efforts to salvaging the deal, saying that Russia was indeed committed to that initiative, but acknowledging that it was going to be a difficult task.
Well, the Iran nuclear deal is one thing, but they do have a lot of things they disagree on. There's Syria, there's Ukraine, right?
Absolutely, and Emmanuel Macron acknowledged that there are areas of disagreement. They talked about Syria, for example, perhaps one of the most profound differences between the two between the two countries. France and Russia stand on opposite sides with regards to that conflict. But even on that topic, they both talked about finding ways of working together. They talked about a political solution for Syria. They talked about a new constitution and even new elections. Of course, that sounds a little bit too optimistic when you consider the level of violence that is still going on in Syria. They talked about Ukraine, but even that was quite brushed away on the MH17 flight. The Russian president actually was confused. He didn't know what plane they were talking about. And then they said that Russia should be involved in the conversation, and everybody was happy. Of course, this was a very important meeting for Macron, but more importantly for Vladimir Putin. And it really seems to signal that Russia is no longer as isolated as it once has been. The mood is certainly brighter now.
Thank you for that. Annelise Borges live in Paris. Now, once a favorite of the far right in the U.S., this week Steve Bannon has been looking for new friends and allies here in Europe. And yesterday, he sat down with our very own Brian Carter in Budapest. And for more on that, Brian joins us now. Hi there, Brian. Tell us about your impressions of the man who helped Donald Trump get elected.
Well, Tessa, we had a 45-minute interview in his hotel suite, and I must admit, in person, he was quite friendly. But as soon as the camera rolled, he became pretty aggressive in some of his accusations to me, calling me the media propaganda machine, serving the global elite. And he became aggressive, especially when we asked him questions that he didn't like. But overall, we managed to speak about Trump, about Europe, about his role in Cambridge Analytica. I think the essence of Steve Bannon's thinking is that he wants to bring power back to the nation state as much as possible, and including in Europe. So that means power of a nation state and not to supranational entities like the EU or the European Central Bank. He says that controlling your nation state is the best way to control your borders against foreigners, to control your currency, and to control your national identity. And the means to that end is to promote populism and nationalism. Now, I asked him if in Europe it wasn't dangerous to promote populism and nationalism given our very own dark history. And here's what he had to say.
Are you playing with fire?
By the way, did not 2/3 of people in Italy and in Hungary, 2/3, voted for populist nationalist candidates? Okay? I didn't see any riots in these countries. I didn't see any things burned down. What I saw is an active discussion. See what the globalists want? They want to all of a sudden say, "Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, you're playing with fire." These terms are so.
You don't think you're playing with fire?
No, absolutely not.
No.
What I think it's doing.
It's not dangerous to promote nationalism in Europe.
Oh, absolutely not. What are you talking about? Nationalism is the reason Europe's greatness is because the nation state, the Treaty of Westphalia, right? The nation state for 300 years built, the greatest society. By the way, it's the mother society of the United States.
Right, which led to 2 world wars, and then you had the European Union, and you had to have.
Was that nationalism? I would say national. I say, was that nationalism, or was that elites, right? Elites that took it on their own power to drive countries where they were.
So clearly here in Europe, the heroes of Mr. Bannon, of Viktor Orban, for defending his country against migrants, and the newly formed government in Italy, where he says it's a great example of how 2 populist anti-establishment parties can come together despite their differences on the left-right political spectrum in order to promote new policies. And he hopes that this kind of
Well, that was Brian Carter reporting for us in Budapest. Well, Steve Bannon, he had a lot more to say to Euronews in that conversation, and we've posted that interview online. You can catch it on Euronews.com. Now, film mogul Harvey Weinstein is to surrender himself to New York police today on charges of sexual misconduct, according to sources familiar with the case. Now, it would be the first time Weinstein has been charged since the accusations emerged last year. Weinstein has been hit with a number of public allegations of rape and sexual assault, but denies non-consensual sex with anyone. And still to come for you on Good Morning Europe, it's decision time on abortion in Ireland as the country votes in a divisive referendum. We'll have all the latest from our correspondent in Dublin. And
here in the Cube, I'll be explaining why you've been getting all of those emails. But first, let's check out your weather.
You're watching Good Morning Europe. Our top story: after President Trump's shock announcement canceling the U.S.-North Korea nuclear talks, Pyongyang is holding out hope of reviving them. A spokesman for the North Korean leader said they hoped for, quote, a Trump formula to resolve the standoff. Irish voters are about to have their say today in what the Prime Minister calls a, quote, once-in-a-lifetime referendum over whether to change abortion laws. Euronews correspondent Vincent McAviney is live for us in Dublin. Hi there, Vincent. What's the mood there today?
Well, good morning, Tessa, from one of the thousands of polling stations across Ireland which have just opened up. And already we've seen a steady stream of people here coming to vote in West Dublin. And the Irish Prime Minister, Leo Varadkar, himself will also be along in a little while to vote here. Now, this referendum has proved incredibly divisive. Leo Varadkar called it because he himself was a doctor and saw firsthand the implications of Ireland's almost total ban on the practice of abortion. It's expected the turnout will be huge, and there are some 40,000 expats who've come home to vote in what's called the Home to Vote campaign. Now, this proved crucial a couple of years ago in the same-sex marriage referendum. This time round, though, emotions are running higher and the polls look so much closer. There's expected that 125,000 new registered voters will also turn up. This has really gripped young people in this country. And so I think we'll be seeing all today queues forming at polling stations like this one.
And this topic has been a polarizing issue. How divisive has it been?
That's right. When this ban was put in place some 30 years ago, there was sort of much pressure on it by the Catholic Church. But this country has really changed significantly in those 30 years. The power of the church has diminished because of the scandals and cover-ups of the 1990s. And so Ireland is definitely a changed country. If you look at Leo Varadkar himself, a gay prime minister, having same-sex marriage here. But when it comes to abortion, there's still quite a climate of shame around it. In the Insiders documentary I did, you heard from women there who've talked about how difficult an issue this is in Ireland. And so yesterday, when I was out and about in Dublin, there were people all around the streets leafleting and campaigning, and they weren't just handing people pieces of paper. They were really engaging with them in conversations about this issue. And as I said, the polls looking incredibly tight here. We're not sure which way it will go. And I'll be here all weekend for Euronews. We're expecting the results at some point late tomorrow or maybe even early Sunday morning.
All right. Thanks for that, Vincent McAviney, live there in Dublin. Well, GDPR Day is here, and if you don't know what that means, we don't blame you. What you should know, though, is that the European Union today is raising the standards and the stakes with strict new privacy laws. Now, Alex has more on that.
I do, and those new privacy laws mean your inbox, no doubt, has been flooded this week. Do you want to stay in touch? Can we stay in touch? Email after email. And the reason companies are having to send these emails is because of these new strict data protection laws. Now, first of all, let's just ask, why are we seeing a measure like this? This is a tweet from an EU commissioner who says that roughly 2/3 of Europeans feel concerned about the amount of personal information about them online. So is this just another regulation? Well, the EU would like to say no. Companies that do not get your permission to use your information can be fined up to 40% of global annual turnover. That's about 1.6 billion if you're Facebook. Now, I guess you could say, so what? So what? What does this mean for me? Well, the crucial thing here is, as those emails show, companies now have to ask you for your permission to hold your information. You can also ask companies for what information they hold on you and request that information be sent. So are companies ready? Well, a couple of people suggesting maybe not. Nick here saying it's hilarious to think they're ready and companies aren't just scrambling to get whatever they can together to deal with GDPR to get it out through the door in time. And people are already noticing that some sites like the Chicago Tribune here and American publications are no longer available as they try and get things sorted to comply. So how is it affecting you? What do you think? Let us know using #TheCube.
I mean, there are a lot of changes happening there. So the question now is, are tech companies in Europe ready for the changes? Jessica Saltz is live at the Silicon Alley campus in Berlin. Jessica, are they ready, in fact?
Well, Tessa, yes, I'm here outside the Silicon Alley campus in Berlin, where many tech startups are based. And there are certainly concerns in this industry about what this data law will mean for them. Many of these companies have been collecting personal identifiable information about individuals in order to be able to tailor the products and services they make. So I've been told by the tech founders that I've been speaking to that this customization process could be affected by this new law, which will give them restricted access to personal information about people, and this could also affect the development and improvement of artificial intelligence. And what does this mean for innovation in the tech industry? Well, one tech founder told me it could go one of two ways. This could be the impetus, he said, for companies based in Europe to veer off in a new direction and become innovative in a new and different way. But he said the problem is that they will still have the problem of competing against companies in other parts of the world, in the US and Asia, that aren't restricted by these data laws. However, overwhelmingly, the people I've spoken to here at Silicon Alley say they do believe this new European law is a good thing. Giving back people control of their data is a good idea, and that they hope this is a precedent for other countries.
All right, thanks for that. Jessica Saltz live in Berlin. And do stay with us here on Good Morning Europe. We'll be back after a look at the weather. You're watching Good Morning Europe. Welcome back. Now, celebrities, sports people, and even the Indian Prime Minister have accepted a social media fitness challenge. What is this, Alex?
They have indeed. This is the video from a minister in India. He's doing press-ups in his office, and this started a trend of people sharing their fitness routines to encourage others. The Indian Prime Minister even accepted this challenge, saying he will post the video later on. So it's going viral in India, but some people suggesting maybe Indian politicians have better things to do, worrying about, say, things like fuel prices here. But as I say, it is a viral trend. Politicians are getting involved. The aim was to encourage people to get fit, get active, and to share videos of themselves doing it. We'll see if the Indian Prime Minister does it. We'll also see if Tesa takes us up on the offer and shares her fitness routine. We'll see. But let us know your thoughts on this or any other stories we feature using #TheCube.
You first, Alex, then me. All right, thank you for joining us today on Good Morning Europe, and we'll leave you with today's no comment from North Korea.
3, 2, 1. Tunnel 2, 3, 4 have all been blasted. GDPR says Tunnel 1 was not shown was abandoned after the first